Welcome to the Zachrilege Cast podcast, YouTube video interview program that features me talking to some of the best and brightest in the atheist secular awesome community. This is episode number 59. We are recording live on June 7th, 2016. I would like to first thank Matthew James, author of Only an Atheist Can Help God Save the World, and the only guest who's pimped an episode more than me, who was on last week. Take a listen. Way to go, Matthew, too. So last weekend was a big one for the atheist community. The Reason Rally happened in D.C., and while some of the movement seemed to revel in the low attendance numbers, let's just say what a bunch of whiny losers. But we're going to get a report from the ground from tonight's guest. Jenica Crail grew up a fundamentalist Christian, but the happy kind, can speak in tongues for your kid's birthday party, and the only person I've heard in the atheist community who has earned a job promotion in the middle of an interview. She is now the media relations director for Dogma Debate, and she probably has heard the Smalley sigh more often than Brandy. Good evening, Jenica. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Zach. Thanks for having me.
So can we kind of get that background for you? Like, how did you kind of grew up in a fundamentalist family? Is that correct?
Yeah, I would call it fundamentalist, evangelical. You know, I never really called it either of those things when I was a Christian. I just said that I was a real Christian, just like all of them out there.
Of course.
People would ask me like what denomination I am, and I told them I was non-denominational and that I just believed what the Bible said, and that was it. So that was kind of my thing. We were the type of family that we took it super seriously. We would go to everything that the church put on. We took doctrine very seriously, and I believed it. I was full in my entire life. I know a lot of people in the community said that they were skeptical throughout their life of things, but I really wasn't in that camp. I wasn't very skeptical. I had to teach myself how to be skeptical, and that's been a little bit of a process, but yeah. Long story short, when I was 27, I did my own research after finding out that my dad was an atheist, and it only took me a couple of months to drop all the shit.
Now, so really it was just your dad who led. This is what's, I guess, the interesting, different part of your story, because usually people that I've met who've gone out of Christianity had some kind of bad upbringing or something kind of, of course that's what people say to atheists, what bad thing happened to you, but right. It's always like there's some kind of negative thing that leads someone to question it. But in your case, you didn't really have that.
Right.
How did you kind of find out that your dad had either questions or had already become an atheist, and what did that do for you, and how did you kind of mentally deal with the cognitive dissonance and decide to actually do your own research and figure out what was going on?
Well, I mean, I had been questioning for like the last couple years of my faith. The thing that really actually spurred me to start asking questions was when my brother came out as an atheist when he was 15, and we're about 4 years apart. I'm older than him. He came out to my parents as an atheist. Well, he said he was agnostic, but he pretty much told them, I've never believed any of this stuff, and I want to stop going to church. And good on them, they actually let him stop going to church, and they were good to him, unlike I know a lot of parents are terrible to their atheist children, but my parents were really good about it. But in my mind, I thought, my brother is a fantastic person. He's kind-hearted, compassionate, sensitive, just an all-around good person. And here, he didn't fit any of the stereotypes of what I had always been taught was a non-believer. And so it brought up the question of original sin for me, and why are we being held accountable for something we don't have any control over? We're born with this illness, this sin nature, and then if we don't repent and turn to Jesus, we're tortured for eternity. In what kind of whacked out world does that make sense? And And so I was struggling with, how do I continue to worship a God that's going to torture my brother for all of eternity for nothing, just because he can't believe the unbelievable. And so that was going on for a couple of years. And then in December of 2014, my dad, we were just having a conversation in the kitchen one day, and he said, "So I've been doing some research for a while now, and I'm an atheist." Just dropped it on me like a bomb. And it hit me like a ton of bricks in the face, obviously, but it also devastated me. And it was just one more thing. Like, we had talked about our doubts and stuff. I knew my dad, had questions just like I did, but it was never a thing where I thought, well, not believing is an option. That was never an option to me. So I had to ask him, like, what kind of research would make a 50-year-old man turn away from the faith that he's been so passionate about his whole life. And so he gave me a list of books, and of course it was Christopher Hitchens. Bart Ehrman was one of the big ones. I started listening to Thinking Atheist, tons of YouTube debates and stuff. And within 2 months, it was February of 2014, was when I admitted to myself, yeah, I'm an atheist. I don't believe this anymore. So even though it seems like it was really fast, it was those 2 months, really, it was something that was kind of building in me, and I was growing more resentful and more kind of angry at God. Like, you don't make sense. If you could just answer my questions and make some sense, I would happily serve you and love you and obey you for the rest of my life. And like you said, it wasn't anything traumatic. It was just like the light bulbs started coming on, and I couldn't turn them back off. I couldn't just shut my brain off. And so now, here I am. I'm a full-time atheist activist.
Yeah, that might be the most amazing part of the story. It's about a year and a half later, and now you're full on in it.
Yeah.
Now we'll talk about the whole, your employment and working with David Smalley and Dogma Debate and all that. One of the interviews that I listened to for this, to get ready for the show, was when you were on Dogma Debate, and you actually read a letter that you had written to your brother. Can you talk about that letter and kind of how maybe it felt to read it after becoming an atheist?
Yeah, maybe I can even, do you want me to try to bring it up and read it?
Sure.
If I can find it. That might be more trouble than it's worth while we're live.
It might, might
distract. Well, never mind. I'll just tell you about it. So basically the letter was, I wrote it to my brother while he was in Afghanistan. He had ordered some books on Amazon and had them shipped to my parents' house, and then we boxed them up in a care package and sent them there. Well, I noticed when we were boxing them up that the God Delusion was in there, and I think maybe a Sam Harris book. I can't remember, but it was a couple. It was Why Evolution is True. I think that one. Anyway, atheist books. And so I got to thinking, and I decided to throw in a book of my own, an apologetics book, and write my brother a letter explaining why I put it in there, and just kind of some of my thoughts about his beliefs and stuff. And the title of the God Delusion was offensive to me, and I wanted to let my brother Nate know that I'm not an idiot. I'm not delusional. This is something that I firmly believe in, and as far as I knew then, it was based on fact. Clearly, I had not done my full research, but it was kind of a rough letter to find. I think I found it like a couple of months ago, and I read it, and I was just like, holy shit. Like, that hit me hard. Just knowing that could be something that one of my family members could send to me now, and knowing how I would react to it. It's like, ugh. And he was in Afghanistan. So, Yeah.
I could see how apologetics would be very much preaching to the choir. Um, Certainly. But when did you get? Because you started blogging fairly shortly after you came out. So when did that get started?
hmm I think I started in April of 2015. Yeah, because I that was when I came out on Facebook. I wrote a long post on Facebook to come out to all of my friends. Like I came out to my family first in emails to some of them and then in person with some of them because and some of my really close friends I came out to them in person or in email. But then after I was done with that I was like now the world needs to know because I'm going to start blogging and I'm going to start talking about this stuff. And so I just wrote a long post and put it on Facebook. And I actually didn't get as much backlash as I thought I might. Um, a lot of people started messaging me saying, wow, it was so brave of you to do that. Thank you for speaking up. You know, I've been doubting for a long time, but I didn't know who to talk to. Now I know I can talk to you. Other people message me and they're like, yeah, I haven't believed in a while, but I just haven't said anything about it. So that was actually really encouraging. It's like, holy shit, I'm not alone. um, I did get some stuff, like some people trying to talk me back into the faith or telling me about the God, like re-describing the gospel to me. I'm like, you do realize I'm 27 years old and I've believed this stuff my entire life. I know the gospel. Yeah, don't need to
Mm-hmm.
tell me the gospel. I got it.
Well, there's a super secret passage you haven't seen yet. It's awesome.
Right? Oh, you just didn't understand grace. That was one of
Mm-hmm.
the things I got. Oh, honey, you just don't understand grace. You didn't have to feel all that guilt and shame because God forgives. It's like, yeah, I know the message. That's not why I don't believe.
You got the bumper sticker. I mean, there's never a great break point, but I might as well mention it tonight. I'm drinking a Full Sail brown ale. This is from Seattle. It's quite tasty. I really like the brown ales. And I also grabbed, see, Jenica is located in Cincinnati, and actually that makes 3 out of 4 Cincinnati guests I've had on. So you, Insomniac, and Adam Collins really need to hang because you have a good time. But I'm also got a beer out of Michigan, New Holland Cabin Fever. It's a winter ale. It's the last one of the season. I'm just gonna enjoy that after we roll in. And Jenica was nice enough to join me in a little wine. It's not all super serious like Mr. Smalley and his don't even say ass or have to apologize before you say that.
Oh, we're allowed to say ass.
I remember when you were talking, you said that. You said, "Am I allowed to say that?"
He's like, oh yeah, that's good, that's good. I know
Speaking
I
of,
was nervous. I was nervous because I have a little bit of a dirty mouth sometimes. I'm like, oh
mm,
my gosh, I'm going to start dropping F-bombs. But I actually kept it together.
yeah, I think for most people, when you have to or you should, you're good. You don't pull a Tom and Cecil cognitive dissonance and just blow out and mess with his system. That's not nice. But later in the show, at the very end, I'm going to give a tribute to the individual who actually led me down the dark path toward podcasting and the first atheist podcast I was on. But I just found it fascinating that the first podcast appearance you made was on Dr. Darrel Ray's secular sexuality show, and you actually had to tell him that he forgot to ask you his traditional question, which was about when you first started masturbating, which I was just like, wow, you're just like, throw it out there. I was very
Yeah, I don't mess around. I always tell people because, people are always asking, I don't know how personal you want to get and stuff. It's like, don't worry about it. I'm an open book. Like I will honestly talk to you about anything you want to talk about. And so I was actually waiting for him to ask me that question because that was one of the things that I loved about listening to his podcast was that he always asked people that, and they always said it was like such a young age. It was like 8 or 9, and that was so freeing to me because I always thought I was such a weirdo. Like I grew up in a culture where they didn't think that women were really sexual beings at all. Like we're just the recipients, we just receive the sex and we don't really enjoy it. We just do it to have babies, like that kind of deal. And like, not everybody thought that way. Like, I knew I was going to enjoy sex when I went into marriage and stuff like that, but I didn't think that it was normal for a girl to have a high sex drive or to start masturbating. And, I started doing that stuff when I was 8 or 9. And to hear that other people had done that too, I was just like, oh my God, I'm not alone. So then when I was on the podcast, I wanted to share my experience too.
And that'll be, I'm going to try to get as many name drops as I can, but yeah, Darrel Ray, sexual or sexuality. And of course, it's, part of that whole secular media group, I believe that is the correct term. So yeah. We're all in the family.
Yep.
So how did you, when did you get started volunteering at Dogma Debate, and how did the transition work for you to go to like social media director and then kind of media relations and do everything director for Dogma Debate?
It all happened kind of fast, actually. I think it was maybe in December of 2015. I started doing like some small volunteer stuff for them. I had chatted with David and Brandy about, a couple of projects they were working on, and I started helping them out with those. And they were impressed with how quickly I responded whenever they needed me, and how quickly that I got stuff back to them and got stuff completed. And so they asked me to come on as a more official volunteer role, and that was when I became the social media director. And it was with the intention that they wanted to eventually bring me on full time, but that actually happened a lot quicker than we all anticipated. And by February, I came on in a more official capacity, and now I'm media relations director, and I handle all of the things. Okay, not all of the things. David handles all of the things, but I handle a lot of the things. One of my main things, of course, is social media, but I also do the emails that get sent out. I do live tweeting during the show. Pretty much anything that David needs me to do. I'll edit. I don't do the editing. I do the auditing of some of the audiobooks that he reads. So I'll read it on the computer screen and listen to the audio at the same time and make sure that nothing's fucked up. And then I'll send it back to him with the okay, like, yeah, it's great, or you need to fix this or this. So yeah, I do a lot of things, but I absolutely love everything that I'm doing with them. It's my favorite job I've ever had.
That's a perfect fit too, and it's a great story for someone if you want to do something and you find the industry you want to do it in, try a volunteer position and see it might turn into something. You might become an atheist superstar in the universe or something.
Yeah, I had no idea what it was going to lead to when I started volunteering. I was like fangirling the whole time I was volunteering, like, oh my God, David Smalley just called me and he has a job for me. I'll bust it out. And the next thing I know, I'm like talking to them every day, and it's not like a big deal. So it's been a pretty cool thing. And of all of the people to get involved with in this movement, I would want it to be them. And it just so happened that I got involved with them. The things that they're doing through Dogma Debate and through Secular Media Group and the I Am Fourth Fund and everything, it's absolutely beautiful. It's exactly what people need when they're coming out of religion, where, you have a church, you're giving money to the church and just hoping that they're doing something good with it and that they're helping people. And then you come out and it's like, well, what do I do to really impact my world now? It's like, I'm defined by what I'm not. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in a God. So what am I? And to discover I am a humanist and I can still impact my world was very refreshing and exciting to get involved with.
So how do you actually, wasn't it your brother who's actually still a Christian who told you about Dogma Debate initially?
Yeah. The Christian brother. We were emailing back and forth after I came out as an atheist, and I had told him that I had started listening to The Thinking Atheist and some other podcasts, and he said, have you ever heard of Reasonable Faith with William Lane Craig or Dogma Debate with David Smalley?
Hmm.
So those were the two ones he suggested in the same sentence. And I had heard of Reasonable Faith, but I hadn't heard of Dogma Debate. And so I looked it up and started listening right away and absolutely loved it. And that was, I think, June of 2015, so just a few months after I became an atheist. Yeah, it's just funny that it was my Christian brother of all people.
I probably could just do podcasts talking about people's like podcast history, because that's just so fascinating and it's so dense now.
Yeah.
Like I first heard of shows, it was like the Atheist Experience. I think I was just searching the word atheist, and Atheist Experience came out. And after a while, they just get all these calls from the crazy Christians, and they just keep tearing them down. And I'm like, I need a little bit of like conversation. So,
right,
like the Thinking Atheist and Dogma Debate were good ones for that. No Religion Required is on the constant list too.
I had never actually listened to podcasts until I became an atheist. It's like, to me, it's just associated with atheism. Like sometimes I forget that there are podcasts that don't have anything to do with atheism, because that's been all I've needed it for. It's my new community now that I'm not in a church.
Yeah, I think any subject you can find that online community, and it's really important, especially if you live in an isolated place, or maybe you're still not old enough to get out of the house. You don't have this opportunity, but you can find people on the internet, and you can find all these voices, and it's really, really cool that happens. Yeah. And I got to talk about the big event, the one that I missed, and I felt so bad about, because I was like watching the live stream all weekend. What was Reason Rally like? Like, can we go through your whole experience? Like, when did you
Oh my goodness.
get up there, and kind of what all? You don't have to tell everything, and maybe some stories about your experience.
Every little detail. I'll tell you
about, minute by minute.
Yeah, I'll tell you about every single hour we spent in the car. No. Well, if you were watching the live stream, you probably actually caught more of what the speakers said than I did. To me, the whole event was just all about meeting my family, meeting all these people that I had become so close with over the past year and a half or so, and seeing them face to face. And I kept going up to people and saying, "Oh my God, you're real, I can touch you." Because like everybody's online, like that's how I know most of these people. So it was just really, really neat to actually be there in person and have face-to-face conversations. So I honestly missed the majority of the speakers. I caught like little tidbits here and there, but I spent the good majority of my time with the Bannisters, Jeremiah, his wife Angela, and Sammy, the little girl who has brain cancer, the Team Tiny Dancer girl. And Jeremiah is of Paleo Radio. And we also hung out with, of course, David and Brandy, and Bobby C. and Ashley of No Religion Required, and a bunch of the fourth listeners. I couldn't name them all because we had a huge group.
I bet.
But yeah, it was a fantastic time. We all met up together. We had like this fourth listener meetup, and then hung out for a little bit, went to lunch, which lunch took way too long. I feel like I spent all of Reason Rally at lunch. But then we came back and we just like mingled and hung out, and it was hot as balls down there. Oh my God. And well, it wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't so humid, but it was so freaking hot, and I don't do heat very well, so I was complaining the entire time.
Yeah. I heard the last time, I think when it was in 2012, it was maybe in April, and it was cold and rainy.
Yeah. Yeah, all the pictures of people are like under umbrellas and stuff. So thankfully we didn't have that, but it was hot.
I just remember going to ReasonCon in Hickory, North Carolina last, I don't know, it was April. And it was a much smaller version of that, because I think there were like 300 people, but there were probably 3 dozen podcasters who I'd only met. It was the weirdest experience I had in my life, because I had met one person that I was at that conference before in person, and that was Chris Heathen, and who's Chris Watson now. He actually has his real name, but yeah, I met David, talked to him briefly, it was just so much. And I would guess that the Reason Rally, even though they said the attendance was relatively low, I'm still thinking 10,000 people.
Yeah.
Those were all 10,000 people that you probably would have had a good conversation with and just didn't have the time.
And to me, like, I wasn't there for 2012, so I don't have that to compare it to. Like, I can't tell the difference between 30,000 and 10,000. So I just looked out over a sea of people who had, pretty close to the same values as me, at least, believe in the separation of church and state and equality and all that. And just knowing all of these people are here to rally for the things that I believe in, that's such a powerful thing. It was really a lot of people. It was packed. But then that evening, one of the highlights of the whole day, me and my husband went to the after party, and we spent most of the after party in the lobby talking to Seth Andrews instead, like just hanging out and chilling and talking to him. Dude is the most down-to-earth, nicest guy you'll ever meet. And, he was very instrumental in, like, well, first of all, me becoming an atheist, but also feeling comfortable as an atheist, like feeling like it was a normal thing, that it's okay, that, I'm not alone and I'm not crazy. And so it had a big impact on me when I was going through the really hard phases, because, it's a grieving process, especially for someone who came from like such a hardcore background as I did. It was really tough going through the anger phase and the feeling like I've been betrayed and feeling, depressed. I kind of felt like it was a death in my family, like I lost a loved one, losing, my belief in God. And so he was there for all that. And then to just stand there in the lobby and just talk to him and just shoot the wind and just have like a normal conversation, it was just really, really cool. And then he ended up sticking around a little bit longer because the banisters were on the way there. And so he stayed and got pictures and met Sammy because she really wanted to meet him. And that was like such a beautiful moment. I had tears in my eyes.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, I had Paleo Radio folks on the show, I don't know, about 10 episodes ago.
Yeah, I saw that. It's fantastic.
I mean, for all the crap that Jeremiah and his family is going through, he's just like one of the most positive people I've ever met. And I don't know, I'd be like hiding under the covers if this was happening to me.
Me too. He's very strong. And the thing that I like about him is that even though he's strong, and he's always smiling and always, so cheerful and everything, he's also really real. And he tells it how it is. Like, he talks about how difficult it is and the fact that he cries every day and that they just have like crying sessions together sometimes as a family. And so he talks about like, it's not all about just putting on a smile and pretending that nothing's happening. And I think that's just as encouraging, if not more encouraging, to other people who are going through hard stuff. Because sometimes you do just have to break down. Like, you don't have to be strong. You don't have, like, there's a Bible verse that says to have joy through your trials because it creates perseverance or something. And that always made me feel like I had to just like put on a smile and have the joy of the Lord when I was in real desperate pain. But sometimes, you have to just let yourself feel it. And I think it's really powerful that he shows that. They're absolutely an inspiration, that whole family.
When he shared the video of Sammy getting like a central line, and just the nurses like telling stories or singing songs to distract her while she's getting this big needle like stuck into the center of her chest was just something else. I mean, I had an extended illness in 2001 and staph infection and almost died, and I had to get like a PICC line inserted, which is basically a permanent, semi-permanent like IV.
Right.
And I had it actually inserted on September 11th, 2001. So it was a very odd day.
Hmm.
But the whole experience that I went through, I went through this for like a month or two. And what they've gone over through has been like more than a year. And Sam, I don't know how old she is, like 10, 8. I mean, she's really, really young. I was in my 20s. I mean, I at least had this life experience. And I'm just so glad that they're able to, they're having this adventure now. Like they went to DC, now they're going to New York. They had friends who like donated a vacation in Orlando. So
Yeah.
that's cool. They're able to do that stuff. And I mean, that's what I hope that people get to do, in atheism, not worry about the negativity toward religion, but like, hey, this is how we live
Exactly.
life.
Right.
And we go through pain and we don't ask for help from a higher power. We ask for the help from other human beings, which we can actually get. And look, it happens, which is lovely.
And that's where it always comes from anyway. Even in religion, that's where the help comes from. And people just say, oh, well, God sent you. No, just being a human who knows what it feels like to be in pain. And it's really cool to see the secular community come behind this family and rally behind them and help them to meet their goals and to reach their dreams for Sammy and stuff. That's what humanism is all about. It's all about us taking care of each other and taking care of our world. It's really beautiful and inspiring, and it's pretty freaking awesome to be a part of it. Jeremiah actually came on Dogma Debate to talk about, all of that and to talk about, Sammy's plans for the summer and stuff, and that she wanted to go to she wanted to go to Washington, D.C. for the Reason Rally. And the fourth listeners actually raised over $4,000 for them to make some of these trips possible for them. And it was just so awe-inspiring to just see like everybody come together like that.
Yeah, I think it started.
Awesome.
I'm guessing maybe you weren't with them yet, but it was like the girl who was like a Mormon, and she was like maybe 18 or 19. Her parents kicked her out, and they were raising money just so she could pay rent for a couple of months, so she could get a job and get started. And
yeah, that was Caitlin.
That got everything going.
Yep.
I wanted to hit on something you mentioned a little bit earlier. You talked, and it all kind of blends together because I listened to like all your interviews last Sunday in a row, so I don't remember which show this was on. But you were talking about like you deal with depression.
Yeah.
And how when you came out as an atheist, you actually stopped taking antidepressants. You actually felt better.
Yeah. I feel like my depression is very trigger based. Like it's always lurking under the surface, but the more triggers I have in my life, the more it rears its ugly head. So like if we're going through rough finances or something, that's a trigger, and that can just send me into a downward spiral. Or like the guilt and shame that I experienced in religion, sexual shame especially, which is why I ended up on the Secular Sexuality podcast, because I felt so much freedom after coming out of religion and dropping all of the sexual baggage that I carried into my marriage and everything, dropping that and just feeling the freedom and the weight lifted off of my shoulders was just incredible. And then, it wasn't just that, it was the cognitive dissonance that I had had for years, trying to make sense in my head, between what I see in the world and what I can feel and touch and experience and science and all this, and then what I believe, and these things completely conflict with each other, and I have to try to make sense of it and try to keep believing this bullshit. And then finally I let go of all of that, and that was a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. So it was just like one thing after another just dropping off of me, and I ended up feeling like light as a feather, like, oh my gosh, this feels really nice. And me and my husband and our boys moved to Cincinnati, about 4 hours away from where we were living. And so I didn't have a psychologist in this area, or psychiatrist, and so I couldn't get any drugs. So I went off of my antidepressants, fully expecting for the depression to come back, and it just never did. And I had only been on them for maybe 6 months. So I think it was just the fact that I could drop so much of the crap that I was carrying around with me. But I mean, I still have like the lingering, like the lurking under the surface depression, and I have anxiety sometimes, but it's not nearly to the extent that it was back before I became an atheist.
So behind you and to your right, who's that resting on the couch?
That's my cat, Toby.
Okay.
He likes to be part of the action.
I have 2 black cats, but they really don't like it when I grab them and throw them on the camera, so I basically closed the door. But yeah, cat person here. So it's time.
Oh dear.
It's time for a very controversial question. This is about
boy.
Reason Rally. I feel like you're uniquely qualified to answer this question. So who at the Reason Rally gives the best hugs?
Oh man. Well, everybody gives wonderful
There
hugs.
could be only one. No one's tied for
God.
first. You don't get participation ribbons.
Am I in trouble if I don't say my husband?
There you go. Well,
every single hug.
I have to work out a little later, but well, of the people that you hadn't met before, maybe. I mean, obviously.
Well, I would have to say that the person that wins the prize I have met before, and it might sound biased, but I promise it's not. He legitimately gives the most fantastic hugs, is David Smalley.
David, I don't know. I think I just got a handshake out of him. I don't want to talk to him. I'd chat with him, but you'd just retweet it, right? So.
No, he really does give awesome hugs. But every single hug at Reason Rally was a sweaty one. It was just, we were all just like drenched.
Yeah, you had to get in there. You had to get in there all the way.
But it's like you see all these people that you absolutely love and adore. It's not like you're just going to shake their hand. You got to hug them. Everyone's like, I'm sweaty. I'm like, me too. It's okay.
Did you have any interaction with like Christian protesters while you were in D.C.?
I purposely did not, because I was there to be around my atheist family. I've been around Christians my whole life. I'm all right. I don't need to talk to them. Besides, they're not the type of Christians that I typically want to have a conversation with, because they're more confrontational and more in your face, and they're not willing to have like a deep conversation and actually consider the things that I have to say. So I'd rather just talk to somebody who's actually willing to sit down and be open-minded. So no, I did not. But I did see Aaron Raw going all over the place, getting right in people's face, like pointing finger and stuff. That was pretty epic.
Quality.
I think he spent all of Reason Rally doing that.
It was weird. Like in ReasonCon, like we all got in this van and went to like lunch, we went to lunch, and there was this minivan and it had like a Christian flag hanging out from it, and I hadn't seen the Christian flag before. I didn't really know what it was. And they were like, we waved at them, and they just like ducked or hid away. And I just remember Bobby C, because he either trained to be a pastor, he wanted to be a pastor, and he was actually like going at it with this guy on the street. Yeah. And he actually recorded it. Maybe you heard the episode of No Religion Required, where he, like, the guy was like, "Oh, I was just driving to my friend's house, and I decided to just stand on the street and yell Bible verses at this hotel." And Bobby was like, "Well, did you know this? Did you know?" And he was like throwing up Bible verses, and the guy was like, "That's not in there." He's like, "Well, let me show you where it is." And
oh my gosh,
like, if you're a preacher, you should know. You should know the words. But you should know. You're like, oh crap. That's the people I want to talk to. I have a friend. I'm gonna have him on the show, I think in 2 weeks. And I know him from my kind of other life as a fantasy football guy, because we've talked about that, because he's into it too. But he's also a pastor. And I was like, I got to get him on the show, because I've not had a pastor yet. I haven't had the Smalley experience of having a pastor on my show, so that's going to happen in a couple weeks, and I think it's going to be an interesting conversation. But I'm looking forward to it, because we've already had a couple really long emails, so I know we're going to actually talk to each other instead of trying to win.
Yeah,
that happens.
That's the best way. to do it. And it's like David has said on Dogma Debate a few times that Vic Stanger actually told him that he should have named the show Dogma Discussions, because it's not really a debate, they just have a conversation. And I think that's totally true. It's just a respectful, chill discuss. Well, sometimes chill, sometimes people go crazy. There was an episode when Chris Nelson was on there, and he was the trip. He was fun.
Isn't he the guy who was either in office in Pennsylvania or he's running for office? He had the drinking problem.
Yes, yeah, that would be him.
He was in a couple of times, and
yeah, you
could tell he like had this weird conviction, but once you like found something that he knew was wrong, he had to like change the subject real quick.
Right. Yeah, and he's supposedly like completely clean now, and I'm inclined to believe him, but he I don't know, he was something else. He was kind of like hyper, I guess would be the best way to put it, in like a respectful way. Just a wee bit hyper.
That is true.
But yeah, so like, and then the cool thing about that is like he's on there being all hyper and like just throwing out stuff and not really listening. And David stayed on the phone on the Skype call with him for a long time, just like trying to bring him back to the conversation and stuff. And I kept thinking, I would have hung up on this guy a long time ago. David is so patient.
Yeah, I do enjoy the Smalley side, though. That's a good one.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of my favorites. Sometimes you end up emulating your boss. I'm sure like you're talking to your husband, you're like, you'll see that. He's like, oh, no.
I have started doing that sometimes. I'm like, oh, my gosh, he's rubbing off on me.
Mm-hmm. Well, how long were you in town this weekend? Were you there just Saturday or longer?
We drove down there on Friday and got there just in time for the comedy show and the pre-party. And David was actually emceeing the comedy show, so that was cool. And then we were there, of course, on Saturday all day, went to the post-party, and then on Sunday we just kind of walked around, did some sightseeing, and then we went and met up with like David and Brandy and Alicia and some other people in the lobby of the mini conference, which was cool because I actually got to meet Lawrence Krauss.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And Mark White from the Spin Doctors.
The best name dropping episode ever, because you got to meet everybody.
Exactly. That's what's so awesome about the Reason Rally.
Now, there was somebody put together this thing called the Rally Bus, and it was going to drive from Atlanta to DC like over Friday night, stay Saturday, and drive back on Sunday. It didn't happen. And I even thought of taking like the some other bus, and I was just like, that would, I don't know. Taking a bus by myself overnight, 2 nights, not knowing anybody, I didn't plan it in advance enough.
Were there just not enough people to take?
Yeah, there basically weren't enough people.
Wow. That sucks.
That is weird. We got a lot of really small groups, but we didn't have really a unified thing, so I think that's what happened. I don't know. It was interesting to see that they didn't get the turnout they wanted, but considering the stuff kind of happening in the background, I can understand it. But I just know every single person that I know who was there, nobody's like, "God, it sucked." Everybody's like, "That was awesome!" Like that was awesome. Right. So that's pretty much, you take it out.
Yep. I don't think it was a failure at all. I know some people have thrown out that word, and absolutely, if you were there, I feel like you can't call it a failure. Or if you were actually like letting yourself experience it, not being bitter. It was just a big family reunion. It was beautiful. I had a blast.
Yeah, you got to take, as we've already kind of covered this, but we just got to take the positive out of it. There's a lot of people wanting to be negative and trying to take things people say and make an issue out of it, and it's just like, okay. I mean, I get this. Like you come out. I mean, you came out of religion. I was never in, but to find this group was like so freeing and cool. But then you find out like, oh crap, there are issues. Like people have each other and people have done bad things. But that happens with every person, and you just have to decide whether you're going to go with it or you're going to move on. And some people just, instead of whining about it, just like, all right, see ya, do something else. It's okay.
Yeah. Excuse me. I was going to say, I like to call it a family. I kind of got that from Bobby C. and Ashley, like the whole, we're a big family thing. And every family has dysfunctional parts, right? We're always going to have drama. We're always going to get in little bickering fights and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, there have been some pretty huge things going on in the movement right now that require huge consequences. But at the end of the day, it's like, I'm not going to abandon the movement just because of some negativity. I'm not going to just walk away from it. I've seen some people say, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm not going to another conference again. There's so much drama going on. It's like, where in the world where have you ever been in a community where there's not drama? That's not exclusive to churches. Churches are just, human organizations too. They have their drama, we have our drama, and you just got to take the good with the bad. And I think that there's more good in this movement than there is bad. Hell of a lot more good.
Yeah, definitely. So what's happening like in the future, and what's going on with Dogma Debate now?
Well, as far as future, we're just going to continue to do what we're doing and continuing to reach out to as many people as possible. Right now, we're working on reaching our membership goals so that we can start putting a big chunk of money every month into the I Am Fourth Fund, which goes to LGBT and atheist youth who are going through hard times or being kicked out of their home. We've already helped multiple people, or several people, since the fund has started. That was actually how we helped this most recent girl, Kara. She was being kicked out of her Jehovah's Witness home. Nice kitty cat.
Scat man decided to sneak in the room, and he's like, you know what? I do not want to be on camera, so we're done with that. That was fun.
Yeah. But anyway, we were able to help someone who was being kicked out of their home recently, and it was a pretty good feeling. So it makes me even more excited to reach those goals so that we can be able to do that more often for people. We also have the Tiny Thinkers project going on. Do you know anything about that? The science books
the
for
books
kids.
you're working on, yeah.
Yeah. So we have the Charlie and the Tortoise one already printed and being sold, and it's fantastic. I actually have it for my boys, and they love it. The illustrations are gorgeous. And then the second one is going to be coming out, and I believe that one's about Carl Sagan, and Lawrence Krauss actually did the foreword for that. So that's going to be pretty exciting when that comes out. And yeah, I think that's pretty much what's going on. We're going to keep doing the awesome stuff we've been doing. And then
Excellent.
for me, I'll be blogging at reallifebeyondfaith.com, and also Dogma Debate is starting a blog on Patheos, so you can see stuff we'll have coming out there too pretty soon.
Are you blogging, is it on Beyond the Fig Leaf, Behind the Fig Leaf? How's that one?
I've actually resigned from that position. I've got a lot going on with Secular Media Group.
Yeah, I can see that.
And now, not only do I have my blog, Real Life Beyond Faith, but I'm also going to be blogging for Dogma Debate, so I had to drop something, so the Fig Leaf had to go. But I still...
The Fig Leaf did have to go.
I removed that Fig Leaf. No, I still very much believe in what the Fig Leaf is all about as far as dropping sexual shame and stuff. But if you want to hear me or read about me talking about that stuff, you can hop on over to the Dogma Debate blog.
Well, I have one issue that's close to my heart. See, I'm in a kind of mixed relationship. I'm an atheist. My wife isn't. What was it like when you were making the transition with your husband? Because it sounds like he kind of came along with you.
He did. I feel really privileged to have that kind of relationship where we actually went through this together. He was about 6 months behind me. Um, but yeah, we both started questioning stuff, and the more questions that I started asking and talking to him about, the more, of course, he had questions because he's like, wow, that's a really good point. Like, I should look into that too. And then when I became an atheist and started just like, and I went through my angry phase where I was just like going crazy all the time, like, fuck this, like, they hurt me. Just like freaking out all the time. That kind of like broke him down too a little bit because he's like, you know what, you're right. Like, this is really damaging and it does a lot of harm and it's really not based on very much fact. He started doing his own research and I did my best to stand back and let him make his own decisions. It's really hard when you're like passionate and you're like getting into the movement and stuff. It's like, please come with me, come with me. But he ended up coming to a lot of the same conclusions that I did, and now he's actually a little bit involved with Dogma Debate as well, doing some graphic design work for our videos and stuff. So you'll be seeing that soon. Yeah, it was funny. When we went on Dogma Debate during the extended show, we actually got him to say "I'm an atheist" out loud for the first time. Because I had never actually heard him say the words. I was like, oh my gosh, yay!
So still a baby atheist then, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, David's like, so when did this happen? Yesterday? Because it hasn't been too long since I have become an atheist, and Patrick was 6 months behind me.
But it was kind of okay dealing with his family. I believe this is one of the stories you told as well.
Yeah. They were obviously devastated, but they told me that they still love me and consider me their daughter. But since then, I've definitely felt a little bit of a connection has been lost, like a little bit of a wedge has been put in our relationship. We don't talk as often. It's not on the same like deep level and stuff, which really breaks my heart because I really love his family. But I believe the total opposite thing that they do. I mean, they're very much still very strong Christians. But I still try to like, maintain it. And I even went to a Christian concert with his sister, my sister-in-law. So like I'm totally willing to go to church and Christian concerts with them, and I try to like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know how to explain it.
No, I mean, family is a totally different monster.
Yeah.
The result of my like long hospitalization was my parents actually got back into the church, and now they're like they go to Catholic church and they actually like bring people in, and it's kind of a liberal version. I think my brother and sister-in-law are in a slightly more literal version. It's kind of sad to see like nephews involved in that because they don't have a choice. It's like they're 10 years old, you're in this.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's something that gets me with the kids. I'm glad that's you and your husband kind of joined in because you had two young kids. I was wondering about the upbringing and if you're getting any pressure, but I'm guessing that's probably not that big of an issue. Maybe it is.
We haven't actually had any conversations with them about that, so I don't know how they feel. Like maybe they feel like we're going to be ripping off the kids by not bringing them to church and stuff. It's very possible. I mean, they're evangelical Christians. They are conservative. They're not liberal at all, really. My mom is. My mom's pretty open-minded and stuff. But yeah, they're probably upset that we're not raising them to be Christians, but I'm really glad that we discovered this stuff when we did, because my boys are 4 years old and 2 years old. So any church experience they've had so far, they're probably not going to remember it, and I get to raise them to be free thinkers and to learn how to think for themselves and not be told what to believe, but how to believe. And it's pretty awesome that my husband is on the same page with me on that, because that was something I was really worried about. If he decided that, he still believed in Christianity and stuff, then we would have had an interfaith marriage, and we would have had to try to figure out like what the compromises were and stuff were. But we actually are still on the same page, so it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, definitely. So where are you from originally?
I grew up in Northeast Ohio.
Okay, well, I'm originally from Pittsburgh, so it's pretty close.
I'm sorry? You're from Pittsburgh?
Yeah,
Oh, that's where my husband's from.
families in there, so go Penguins, right?
I'm actually a Steelers fan.
Oh, wow. See, this is the weirdest thing about me. So I grew up in Pittsburgh in the 1970s when they had the greatest run ever. And I became like a Dolphins fan because I like the colors better. I don't know. I was always been a go the other way, go against the grain kind of person. So I never did. And then my parents moved to Nashville, so I became a Titans fan. So it's weird because I have all this family, and black and gold is still pretty big, and they'll come down anytime there's a game, and it's just it's odd.
That's funny. Yeah, and I'm not even from Pittsburgh, and here I am a Steelers fan.
In Cincinnati, oh my gosh, could be in trouble, but no.
Hey, but I didn't grow up here.
Yeah. That is true. That's a good point. Now, I was thinking back to when I interviewed Naomi and Neil, who did the Unequally Yoked podcast, which actually stopped running, and they grew up Mormon, and they married as Mormons, and then he decided he was an atheist, and she stayed, and just to hear them and their kids talk, it was like, oh my gosh, yeah, when you have that kind of break in a family, it's got to be really, really tough to deal with it on a daily basis.
Right.
Like, what kind of messages, people are giving their kids?
Yeah, I actually did a little bit of research when I first became an atheist, and was faced with the fact that I was an atheist and my husband was still a Christian. I did some research about how do you raise kids in a mixed marriage, because I still absolutely adored my husband and I wanted to stay with him through everything. And I found that kids who are raised in families with multiple religions actually end up more skeptical, and a lot of times end up non-believers, or at least really liberal in their faith, because they see, my mom believes this fervently, my dad believes this fervently, maybe they're both wrong. So that was encouraging, and I could definitely see that happening.
I think it's the more points of view that you're exposed to, the better. Just hearing all the rhetoric and people saying negative things about like Muslims and others just makes it crazy. Like, if you've only been involved with one group of people, then you can't relate to these other people, and it's like they're not really that different. And honestly, you're not going to be on the same page on everything, so that's probably good for the kids. But the kids will grow up in a multiple cat family, so that's good.
Yeah, we have 2 black cats.
I saw.
See them back here playing.
They both came up. Yeah.
Yeah.
2 black cats, and they're something else. We had 2 that died in a 6-month period, and we were like, you know what? I don't know if we're going to be cat people for a while. And 5 weeks later, we had 2 new ones. That's how it goes. Once a cat person, always a cat person.
These 2 kind of snuck into our lives. It was the November after me and my husband got married, and we saw a couple of tiny little black kittens outside. Sorry, he's over there meowing. Tiny little black kittens outside in the cold, and they were out in our stairwell crying because they were cold. And I'm like, all right, we gotta let them in. We need to at least feed them for tonight. We'll bring them somewhere in the morning. Nope, that didn't happen. Totally fell in love with them, and so they adopted us instead of us adopting them.
Yeah, that was the whole. We had lost our other cat like 5 weeks ago, and it was like, okay, we're gonna go to the cat place, and we're just gonna look. And we were just totally lying to ourselves. We knew we were coming in with cats, and we can't wait to.
Right.
We had thrown away all of our cat stuff except for a few toys that had emotional value. And then we're like, oh, got to go buy everything again. It's probably good because, you don't want to have too much old cat stuff, special cat boxes. Like,
yeah, that's true.
I mean, I remember I
It's
first
pretty
got
nasty.
together with my wife, and it was like scooping the cat box. I cannot do this. And now it's like, yeah, I do it. I didn't even think about it.
Yep. Yeah, and that was before
That's
we had children, so we called them our children. And then once we started having real kids, then they kind of got like brushed aside. And I'm like, why do we have cats? There's so much work. Actually, cats aren't really that much work compared to dogs, but still, it feels like a lot when you're taking care of two toddlers. Because then you've got the cats making messes and you got the litter. Ugh. But I'm just exhausted from everything, so
I bet.
seems like a lot.
We've reached about the hour point, so I think about 5 minutes ago you pretty much gave all the information, but go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you, you know, Dogma Debate, your blog, and you know, Twitter, and all that good stuff.
All right. Well, you can email me at jenica@dogmadebate.com, or you can follow me on Facebook. I'm just Jenica Crail on Facebook, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only one. I'm Jenica Crail on Twitter, at Jenica Crail. And Jenica Crail is spelled Jenicacrail. And I absolutely love being in contact with people. You can message me, contact me however you want to, and I will respond to you immediately.
Excellent. And as always, all those links will be available in show notes on iTunes when I get the show up, probably by tomorrow. Got to do this special happy birthday message to Giselle Lewis. He is a friend that I met at a local freethinkers group, the Gust group. Told me about this podcast called Barroom Atheist. Hi, Bill and Susie. Sorry about your car, but glad to see you did it right in DC this weekend. 6 months later, I'm a guest on their show. And 2 months later, the Zachrilege cast is spawned. So if you hate the show, it's all his fault. Happy birthday, Giselle. I would like to quickly, before we call it a night, announce 2 future guests. I'm about 90% sure that I'm going to get 3 repeat guests next week who have formed the most unnatural podcast this side of Sweet and Tea. It's Lucifer's Ladies, featuring Miss Ashley, Corinne Stormborn Snow, and Susie Robbins. We'll be on next Wednesday night at 9:30 because I like to keep you guessing on Showtime. In 2 weeks' time, I will have... as I mentioned before, my first pastor guest, his name is Matt Riddle. He ties a meme tie, and we're going to talk a little Christianity and atheism. It's going to be fun. So if you want to support this show, you can be like Bobby, Hugh, and Coyote, Men of Distinction, and go to patreon.com/Zachrilege, Zachrileg. I like to have hard to spell names. You can follow me on Twitter, like the Zachrilege Cast page on Facebook, and send all hate mail to zachrilege.cast@gmail.com. Thank you to Jenica for being on tonight. I'd like to say to everybody, stay safe. If you need to chat, I'm available. If you're an atheist and feel alone, you're not alone. Reach out. Let's chat and get that human connectiveness that keeps people coming back every Sunday. Stay skeptical. I love all y'all. Good night.